Welcome, I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today, we'll talk about the astrology of week 3 of May 2024. If you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/NinaGryphon, where if you sign up, you can get early and in many cases exclusive access to astrological and magical content. At the highest tier, you will get access to my monthly ebook, Magical Elections, which will give you the right times and the methods for making astrological talismans each month of the year. On May 20th, the Sun enters Gemini, which kicks off a party in Gemini, as in a few days, Venus will enter Gemini, followed by Jupiter, so we'll close out the month with the Sun and both benefics in Gemini, which is quite nice, especially for those of us with natal planets in Gemini or the other air signs. Also, if your profected ascendant is Gemini this year, May and the first half of June could be quite nice for you, as the benefics and the Sun travel through this sign. The Sun in Gemini inaugurates the last month of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. All the mutable or double signs come at the end of their respective seasons, since they are the sign associated with the phase of destruction, rolling up the carpets, breaking down the scenery, and ushering in something new. May 23rd, we get the full moon at 2 Sagittarius. This lunation is ruled by Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, who is in the last degree of Taurus, conjoining Venus. There is a sense in the next 2 weeks that we are on the border of a new era, as shown by Venus and Jupiter about to change signs. Jupiter entering Gemini particularly shows a change in focus for the following 12 months. The fact that the benefics conjoin before changing signs suggests a gift or benevolent action that brings about a new era. Perhaps it's a going-away gift, but one that makes the future possible. Venus and Jupiter will also make a sextile to Neptune at 29 Pisces, which can manifest as an outpouring of compassion and humanitarian feeling. Something good can be born into this world from this full moon. The big conflicts that we are seeing in the world now could see an infusion of money or influence that can change things for the better. Remember that Jupiter and Venus, even though separating, are still within orb of Uranus, so that extreme, shocking, or surprising quality is present in this lunation and will be carried forward for the next couple of weeks. The shift I'm describing could be quite dramatic because of this. On a personal level, we now have the opportunity to do something uncommonly good for ourselves and for others, so perhaps think of some good deeds you could do for others in the upcoming couple of weeks. May 23rd, Venus will enter Gemini. So Venus now enters the realm of the agent of change, Mercury. This year, Venus's passage through Gemini is quite important in that she conjoins the Sun while in Gemini. So Venus's transit of Gemini in 2024 is linked to the ending of one cycle and the start of another. Gemini offers Venus the chance to be an instrument of change herself. Planets in Gemini have the opportunity to become agents of change, each in their own way. So Venus now signifies a change in the way of the heart. In the esoteric manifestation of Venus in Gemini, she transforms the heart and therefore the world through divine love. The selflessness of which Venus is capable can now be distributed to the world at large, as Mercury does. Love and compassion are no longer reserved just for oneself and those close to us, but for the world at large. Gemini in particular relates to humanity as fundamentally social creatures, so Venus's passage through this sign, especially because she eventually conjoins the Sun here, provides an opportunity for us to expand our good and pro-social feelings to a larger group of people, all of humanity, and ultimately all of creation. The universe continually presents us with opportunities to be truly great and live up to our full spiritual potential, but very often there are few takers. May 23rd, Jupiter at 29 Taurus will sextile Neptune in Pisces. Given that this combination involves an outer planet and a superior planet, the manifestations of this aspect will be quite strong on the mundane and collective level. This Jupiter sextile Neptune is absolutely about the demonstration of compassion and brings a rare opportunity for people and nations to unite behind the common goal of alleviating suffering. The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which started this current cycle, occurred in the spring of 2022, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and nations united to provide lots of military and financial aid to Ukraine. That has really only faltered during 2023 as Jupiter and Neptune were in averse signs. But now that they are headed to a harmonious aspect, we may see a repetition of that sentiment so overwhelming in 2022. It may involve the conflict in Gaza, we cannot say, but Taurus in particular is related to Western Russia, Ukraine, and that region. May 25th, Venus at 1 Gemini trines Pluto in Aquarius. This is a harmonization of the underworld god and the young woman joined by a trine aspect. We are now reminded of the myth of Persephone, or Kore, which just means the girl, who was kidnapped by Pluto. She was taken to Hades and made to eat a pomegranate seed to ensure that she was forever bound to the underworld realm, at least for part of the year. This is a very ancient trope where life emerges into the world in the spring and then retreats below the earth in the fall. Similarly, this aspect reminds us that while we can take advantage of the powers and blessings of Venus, we are now also, temporarily, seeing the generosity of Pluto. Remember that Pluto is the rich one and he has much to offer under the right circumstances, though there is always a price, as he is the lord of the underworld. Let us remember that all benefits and pleasures offered now arrive with some kind of obligation. May 25th, Jupiter will enter Gemini. Traditionally, Jupiter represents truth, morality, and that which is valued in the world, such as social status and wealth, but also spiritual values and teachings. There is a bit of contradiction in these terms because the values of the world are often in conflict with values of the spirit. The world values wealth and power, whereas spiritual traditions find these suspect and generally treat them as hindrances to growth and to union with the divine. Jupiter will therefore operate differently when viewed through a mundane lens versus an inner or hermetic one. Let's talk about Jupiter in Gemini at the deeper level, since this is rarely discussed nowadays, if ever. In Gemini, the sign of Mercury, there is only transmutation. In alchemy, Mercury is the agent of change. He is that which causes things to change their properties and transmute into perhaps new substances entirely. Mercury doesn't judge the right and wrong of change. In that way, he is without values and morals. He's quite different from Jupiter. Mercury's only function is to make change occur when it needs to, and to preserve the ungraspable ambiguity of existence. Mercury actively works to avoid things being cut and dry. Just as we believe we are sure we know how things work, Mercury transforms them entirely. In other words, he keeps things weird. This is why Jupiter is in detriment in Mercury's signs, including Gemini. Jupiter represents judges and established moral values, which are uncomfortable in the shifting Quicksilver sign of Gemini. This is also a good time to talk about planets in detriment in general. In a natal context, I don't believe they are a moral or even psychological flaw. There are plenty of well-adjusted people with planets in detriment, since we have to take more factors into consideration than just zodiacal dignity to determine how a planet will manifest. Especially planets that are peregrine or zodiacally debilitated will depend greatly on other factors like aspects, fixed stars, dispositors, etc. In and of themselves, though, they are not bad. Jupiter is a powerful force in his own right, and in the signs of Mercury, he is particularly magical, and he becomes unconventional. He pursues his moral and worldly values via non-standard means and unusual places. In Jyotish, Jupiter is called Guru, literally the dispeller of darkness, as well as a spiritual guide. In Gemini, Jupiter is an unconventional guide, perhaps teaching through tricks or humor, or through the hermetic arts, which are often not socially acceptable, such as astrology, alchemy, magic, and divination. Jupiter always seeks the truth, but in Gemini, it will be through unconventional means. Plato wrote in Phaedrus about the nature of the philosopher misunderstood by the world at large that well describes the dilemma of Jupiter in Gemini. Open quote. The mind of the philosopher alone has wings, and this is just, for he is always, according to the measure of his abilities, clinging in recollection to those things in which God abides, and in beholding which he is what he is. And he who employs aright these memories is ever being initiated into perfect mysteries, and alone becomes truly perfect. But as he forgets earthly interests and is wrapped in the divine, the vulgar deem him mad and rebuke him. They do not see that he is inspired. End quote. Mercury rules the wind, and Jupiter in Gemini can help generate prana, or the psychic winds, through the channels of the subtle body. In this sense, the spirit can animate matter and the body. However, a possible danger of Jupiter in Gemini, as an air sign, is an excessive rationalism that excludes the unknown, the subconscious, the weird, and the mysteries of the universe. Jupiter may bring gains in Gemini just as easily as in his more favored signs. The gifts themselves could be unusual or inverted in some way, true to the symbolism of detriment. They may be gifts of the spirit, for example, or even if they are material gifts, they arrive through uncommon means. Our own efforts in this direction are favored while Jupiter passes through Gemini. If we want to study magic, alchemy, or astrology, now is a good time to start. If we already pursue the Hermetic arts, Jupiter transiting Gemini might offer some new insights, achievements, and opportunities to level up in those pursuits. As I mentioned earlier, Jupiter in Gemini teaches in subtle ways true to Mercury's sign. His lessons may be easy to miss as lessons, or even if we recognize that we are viewing a teaching message, it may be hard to decipher. It could be veiled in symbolism or otherwise obscured. The advice in these cases is to stay with it, and the message may clarify with time and focus. So much for the inner or esoteric perspective on Jupiter in Gemini. From the outer or exoteric perspective, Jupiter is indeed harmed in Gemini. The guardians of public morality, religion, social norms, and social goods are scandalized by the wandering sage or holy person and may find them quite disturbing and threatening to the order that they seek to preserve. When viewed purely through a material lens, Jupiter in Gemini can indicate promises that don't quite measure up. I am reminded of Pope Celestine V, who ruled the Church for only about 5 months in 1294. He was a monk and a hermit who was considered quite holy, and he tried hard to reject being elected Pope, and is even said to have attempted to flee, but finally a deputation of cardinals persuaded him to take office. He resigned as Pope after 5 months, recognizing his complete lack of political or organizational acumen that's needed for the job. Popes and religious figures are governed by Jupiter, and Celestine V is an excellent example of one with great esoteric authority who's not in any way suited for Jupiter's worldly roles. I will discuss Jupiter in Gemini in a separate video for patrons and will develop his exoteric or outer manifestations in more detail there. Thanks for watching. I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.